Hello, how's it going? How are you all? Today we're going to talk about flat slings. On the one hand, the American standard flat sling with its ASME 30th September standard, and on the other hand, the European slings, called European by regulation in 1492-1. So stay tuned to see all the content coming up next. I'm Sergio Jelincic. Welcome to Gorila, where we simplify technical topics playfully. Today, we discuss Gorila flat slings under American and European standards. You might wonder about the differences. And just like before, today we're going to talk about Gorila flat slings, both under the American standard and on the other hand, under the European standard. I imagine you might have some questions like what the differences are, what is a synthetic sling, how is it used, recommendations for use, where to use them, also some recommendations on how to inspect these items, and last but not least, what makes Gorila different from its competitors. But to be able to answer all those questions that I imagine you have, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel, just so this community keeps growing. Now, without further ado, getting into the subject, what is a sling? Starting from the fact that a sling is a lifting device, I imagine you're still wondering, what is a sling? A sling is a device. It has a loop at each end where you can lift. Now, getting into, what a synthetic sling is. A synthetic sling, especially the ones we have here on the table, are made of polyester. You can find different types of configurations in the market regarding their raw materials, but the common denominator worldwide is polyester. What kind of polyester? Starting from the fact that this sling here has a class 7 classification in polyester. And what does that mean? It's a sling that has undergone a thermal treatment to have greater durability against certain chemicals like ethers or some alkalis. It's important for you to understand this, because in the market, you can also find some slings that are made of nylon. And what is the main difference between nylon and class 7 polyester? Nylon stretches 7 to 11%, so a 1 mem sling extends to 1.1 menes. Polyester stretches 3 to 5%, making it less elastic, hence synthetic slings are recommended. Nylon, as a textile, is flexible, lightweight, and easy to handle. However, consider weather conditions when using it. On the other hand, polyester has an elongation that ranges from 3 to 5%, which makes it less elastic, where it is advisable to use a synthetic sling as a textile material with advantages like flexibility, low weight, and easy handling. Two key precautions relate to weather. Polyester slings shouldn't exceed 90 degrees or high UV exposure as it quickly deteriorates. Where is it advisable to use this in the market? A type of polyester textile sling should not exceed 90 degrees Celsius, nor should it be exposed to high concentrations of ultraviolet rays, as this can deteriorate the strap very quickly. So, if we think about the market, where would it be advisable to use this? In any storage area that is away from ultraviolet light, or also in places that are far from acids, or simply in areas where there is a lot of pollution that could deteriorate the strap over time. And finally, also in places where welding work is being done, this should never be nearby because there could be an imminent accident, as a welding spark can cause a burn on the strap, leading to an incident or possibly a fatal accident. Therefore, it can be used in any industry where proper care is taken to ensure a long lifespan for this element. As for the recommendations for use that you can have with synthetic slings, whether American or European regulations, you have to store it in a place where there is room temperature where sunlight does not affect it. On the other hand, don't drag them. Many people drag these slings or simply step on them or put weight on them, and all that does is damage them. Therefore, since this is a highly resistant element, you need to take the necessary precautions to ensure the product lasts longer, and the most important thing is to maintain its care. What are the differences you can find between American standards and European standards? Well, number one, and the most important thing is that in the American standards, you can work with widths ranging from 1 inch to 24 inches. And that's wonderful. Why is it wonderful? Because it gives you the possibility to work with large load capacities while having a strap that is thinner, making it more efficient for confined spaces compared to a flat sling under European standards. And I'll explain why in a moment. And since you can also work with widths up to 24 inches, it gives you the ability to cover a work area when you're working in a basket-type lifting position, which better covers what you want to lift, and this directly relates to the center of gravity being covered. On the other hand, the European standard for flat slings, which is EN 1492-1, has a color code, and that makes it very different from the American standard. And what does this mean? The European standard flat sling has a color code for load capacity. For example, violet is 1 ton, green is 2 tons, yellow is 3 tons, gray is 4 tons, and it goes up to 8 tons, which is orange. In addition to the color, it has lines, which the American standard sling does not have. And this can be very useful when you're working, as you can visually gauge how much you're lifting from a distance by using the color code and the lines. But what are its advantages and disadvantages compared to the others? In my opinion, if you want to lift heavy loads with a European standard flat sling, you don't work with layers. Your sling, as it has a greater load capacity, increases in width, going from 35 meters to even 300 meter wide, and that means it's a very wide sling. For the low load capacity it can lift compared to the flat sling. What are the other differences it has? The European standard flat sling gives you a design factor of 7, while on the other hand, the American standard provides a design factor of 5. And what does this mean? For those who don't understand, if I'm lifting a ton of load, whether under American or European standards, it means that the design factor or braking factor for this 1 ton sling should brake at 5 tons because it has a factor of 5, while the European standard flat sling should brake at 7 times that. And what does this mean? For those who don't understand, if I'm lifting a ton of load, whether under American or European standards, it means that the design factor or braking factor for this 1 ton sling should brake at 5 tons because it has a factor of 5, while the European flat sling should brake at 7 times that. What makes Gorila different from the competition? The truth is there are many differences that it can have, and we will discuss that next. Firstly, our eyes are fully reinforced, unlike many other suppliers who don't. The black edges aren't just paint, they reinforce the sling sides, protecting its lifespan. Slings often deteriorate laterally, so this extends their life. Gorila meets ASME 30. Third, all the edges that you can see in black are not just paint. They also reinforce the sides along the sling, which helps maintain and protect its lifespan. Those in the know will understand that one of the first areas where a sling starts to deteriorate is the lateral wear. So with this, we ensure and extend the lifespan of the element. On the other hand, and no less important, especially regarding the ASME 30 standard from September, which is the American standard, we at Gorila are also covered under the WSDA. What is the WSDA? The WSDA stands for Webs Link and Tie Down Association, which is a non-profit foundation originating in North America. Ultimately, all textile manufacturers look at the best practices for these products to incorporate technology day by day. On the other hand, in the American standard, at least when we talk about our differentiation as Gorila, our traceability doesn't just stop at this section, it also extends to the interior part. And why did we do it this way? If for that reason there happens to be an incident or accident and the label is lost, we can still trace the information inside the eye. Lastly, and no less important, there are 2 other differentiations. Our slings are protected on their label to also preserve their lifespan. And why is it important? And we're going to see this when we answer the question about inspection. Because with this, we manage to protect the label for greater durability. The most important thing is that our synthetic slings, both under American and European standards, have a unique code traceability. And what does this mean? It means that if for any reason you buy 10 identical slings from us, they will never be just 10 identical slings. Each one is unique in its own right. And this means that we have the exact traceability of each unit sold to our customers, which gives us complete traceability from when the sling was created to when it finished its use. This is directly related to the traceability we have through the quality certificate. How to inspect a synthetic sling? And here I want to give you some very basic and simple tips that you need to keep in mind when inspecting a synthetic sling. First of all, and this is a rule, the first thing you need to do when inspecting a synthetic sling is to check the label. And why is it important to check the label? And you'll realize that in all the content that will come up later, especially regarding lifting and safety at height in general, the key point is the label. And why is that? Because here is where the traceability is found. And since these elements are certified by international organizations, this is the first thing you need to ensure is in order. And what does this mean? First of all, the brand or the factory that distributes this product has to be displayed. Number 2, it must have a product code. Usage warnings. The classification of the polyester, which in this case is class 7. the standard under which it is certified, which could obviously be, as I mentioned, the European standard, which is the N, or in this case, the ASME from September 30th, along with the design factor. And why is what I'm mentioning important? Because when inspecting, one can realize that some products have their label. But they might have their label, yet in many cases there are providers that put incorrect information, and that directly leads to the product being taken out of service. If the label has any flaws, it must be taken out of service. And another thing that is extremely important to highlight is that it absolutely must have a label showing its load capacities for its different uses. If the label has any flaws, it must be taken out of service. And another thing that is extremely important to highlight is that it absolutely must have a label showing its load capacities for its different uses. And what does this mean? It must show its load capacity in a vertical manner, in a U-shape or basket type, or also in a loop. And why is this important? Because depending on how you are going to use your rope, your sling, its load capacity will be affected based on how you use it. And obviously this also has to do with the length, in this case, which is an American standard sling. It has to do with the number of layers and also its width. Moving away from the topic of the label and getting into the inspection recommendations, as I mentioned, if there is no label or if the label is illegible or torn, the product must be taken out of service immediately. Number 2, before inspecting an item, you also need to check if the current quality certificate is available. And why is it important? Because the regulations require that it must be inspected at least once a year by a competent person in the field. Therefore, if you have a sling that has been in use for 3 years and hasn't been checked, inspected, and the certificate is gone, you can't use it, and it must be taken out of service. Unfortunately, if you are in the inspection process and you already realize that the sling has its label, that it has all the traceability I just mentioned, you always have to start from the head to the feet. And what does from head to feet mean in a rope? From eye to eye. Therefore, you need to check from the eyes that the stitching is undamaged, that there are no welding burns, that it is not knotted, which is often the case, that it is not deteriorated, that it is not crushed, and that it does not have any damage that could lead to an incident or accident in the future. You also need to notice and be concerned that the stitching is not open. So, inspecting a textile material is extremely simple when looking at other products we will see in the future. Because ultimately, the most important thing you need to focus on is that the label is visible, legible, and properly attached, as well as checking that there is no visible damage at the time of inspection. In the event of any cut that has welding burns, you must take it out of service immediately. Thank you very much for staying with us until now. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and rest assured that we will respond as soon as possible. Because our intention is for you to keep learning with us about what makes Gorila different from the competition, as well as to learn about this beautiful field of industrial safety regarding slippage, load securing, and working at heights. Thank you very much for staying with us until now.